Be quiet, you know.
Yeah.
Never know.
And there's 4 girls between 16 and 20, some from high school, maybe engaged to college. That place thing.
I'm not sure about that.
We won the TV when we did the thing in August.
Okay.
Are we still going to the old committee?
Yes, still based on.
And we
So
did
we
doctor
have
over there.
4.
4 kid watches only 50%.
Okay,
He's
gotcha.
working for DCR, so brought him into the local.
Yeah, we do remember that.
Sylvette, is there anyone online?
Accepting the audit to
There
exec.
is not anybody online.
I think
Can
we
we do
could
that?
make a recommendation,
Okay.
but not officially accept it as a committee because we don't have a quorum. So we're gonna listen to it and,
Okay, so you want to still do that in finance?
yes,
Okay.
unless we know of anybody else who's trying to dial in.
No, that's what I was thinking, do we want to move it to exec, or can we not do that since we published agendas?
I don't think we, since we published the agenda,
Yeah,
I'm not sure we can.
Colin says we're ready. Colin and Sylvette is holding us up.
Hang on, she's updating her Facebook.
I thought she was in the middle of a game of solitaire.
Oh,
Your status or
I'm
where
trying
you're
to get
doing
the audit.
For Facebook, I hope everyone saw Tractor Day at Northwestern High School yesterday.
Okay.
There's a day in the spring where all the kids drive their tractors to high school.
Really?
Yes, there's about 20 of them in the parking lot.
We're at Northwestern.
Northwestern Lehigh High School.
Barbara Brooks.
Oh,
That's wild.
Robert Brooks dialed in.
oh, okay, so we do have a quorum.
So now we're good.
Okay, so we'll go ahead.
See?
We're okay to start? Okay, sounds good. Okay, good morning, everyone. Frank Fasciano could not be here today, so he asked me to chair the Finance Committee, so we'll go ahead and call the May 23rd, 2024 meeting to order. First item on the agenda is roll call. Sylvette, can you call the roll, please?
Frank Facciano, Paul Anthony,
I'm here.
Robert Brooks,
He's there.
John Hayes,
Here.
Ron Heckman, Larry Hamburger, Mike Stershik,
Here.
Jonathan Strauss.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, good, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
Okay. We'll move into the action items for the committee this morning. First is approval of the meeting minutes of the April 25th, 2024 meeting. Those minutes were posted via Novus Agenda. I have a motion by Mike. Do I have a second? By Jonathan. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, I'll turn it over to Todd for review of the April 2024 financials.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All righty. Start off with April financials. Always start off with our traffic. Thank you. So year to date, this is probably our best year to date since 2004. You can see we're up 6.5% year to date versus last year. Month of April, not quite as robust as it was in 2022 and 2019, but year to date, we're doing slightly better than we were last year, like I said, 6.5. That's first 4 months since 2004. Always compare ourselves to all airports. You can see that our throughput is 16.3, almost double all airports. Again, our seats are down versus all airports, but the seats we get, we do use. So you can see there's quite a factor there as far as the seats versus throughput. More than 3 times the seats is the impact on the throughput. Comparing ourselves to our peers, again, if you look at our peers, this is again compared to 2023. We're no longer comparing to 2019. That's our new benchmark year. You can see that we're quite in the middle there, 16.3. But if you take out Newport News down there, we're right around the midpoint, which is about 15% for throughput, and we're still down versus seats about 13.8. The ones that are ahead of us have significant, most of them have significant low-cost carrier, Breeze, was it Breeze in Wilkes-Barre? No, and Long Island. Yep, So they have new service from Breeze, which is part of Visionary versus ours.
Who pulled out of Newport News? Why were they down so much?
That was actually Breeze also, that pulled out of there.
Okay,
Either Breeze or Bello, I can't remember, I think it was Breeze.
okay.
The month of April, we had a good month. We started off the year kind of rocky, if you remember. We had some snow early on in January and February. We're a little rocky, but the last 2 months have been pretty good. So you can see our budget, it was a negative number, but we had a pretty good month for the month of April. Then if you look at where we are year to date we are 1.4 without cares. If you compare that number to last year without cares, we were 1.8 without cares. And then in 2022, we were about 1.3 without cares. And if you really want to think about how far we've come, we were at 190,000 in 2021, the first 4 months of 2021.
And also a quick reminder on that, the 2024 budget included through April of '24, $2 million in CARES money. We took $2 million in CARES money.
Correct.
So they washed, there's no difference in terms of.
So that budget variance, and you can slide that up there so that you can see there. Slide that down just a little bit. It is that's the same variance that is almost 1.7 there, because we did assume taking out $2 million of CARES. And as a reminder, we have 2.7 for this year, so we plan on taking the other 700,000 later in the year, and then there'll be 1.7 left over next year, which we'll probably take early in the year, and we'll be done with all of our CARES. Breaking down where the money comes from, what makes up our net income, number one on the list is CARES. That represents 59% of our net income, and followed by parking. So those two, the top two, account for a little over 100% of our overall net income. Everything else is kind of covering itself. So you kind of get a feel how much that CARES really has an impact on us overall. Hey, how are you doing? Then breaking down the budget impact, what's really driving our budget variance of that 1.6. And as John alluded to, there's nothing on here about CARES, so that's not a variance one way or another. But the biggest one up there is personnel, and it's really more on the benefit side than it is on the wages. We've had a little bit more overtime, and that's cost more, but we've saved some on some of the personnel costs related to benefits. Net interest, we use some conservative numbers. We've been really working behind the scenes to get the best interest rates we can. We do shake down a few banks, sorry, Ricky, to get the best rates we can get. Depreciation, if you remember depreciation, some of the things we wrote off last year are going to impact us this year because they've been written off, so that's less depreciation. And this is kind of breaking down personnel versus non-personnel. So that 8 is really like a -2 on wages and like a -19 on on benefits costs, which makes up that -8. See that -8 versus budget there? So that it's about -2 on wages and about -19 on benefits. And then the non-personnel. But again, even though our budget was semi-aggressive, you can see we're still up pretty significantly versus last year. And this is kind of what I was alluding to. So even though our full-time, some of those full-time positions we have not hired yet, because we've been paying more in overtime, we're making up for that in overtime in the wages, but we're obviously not paying some of the benefits of those folks who are actually hired. Then breaking down where our department employees are, I'll get a feel here. Then our cash flow, the yellow items reflect some things that were just moved around a little bit from last month. 297 is a property I'm sure we're going to talk about. That's for later this next week, I think, Darren, is we're going to do that. So that's in there. And then some of the other
Property we approved last month, right?
Yes. And this is some of the tweaks that we have every month. Some of them are minor, but just from month to month what's changed, and that's really a lot of it on our cash flow. It revolves around some of those capital timing grants and when we pay them out. And this is kind of our new format here. You can kind of see up there, just to break down where kind of our reserves are. That number 172 at the bottom there is after 180 days of reserves. So you have kind of, and that's unrestricted money. So that 7 money up there is really restricted money that can only be used for certain things, mainly AIP projects. We can't use it for salaries or operations. It has to be used for specific projects. That's why it's restricted. We're breaking down our O&M, which is approximately 2 months of reserves. Then you're breaking down renewal and replacement, which is 500,000, contingency, which we call the Eddy Reserve. And we had our old 60-day number is there, and then to get us up to 180 is a difference there. And this kind of shows in a graph format. We have, in April is 346 of unrestricted cash total, but we're using 180 reserve, and you can see we stay above that line for the foreseeable future. We're pushing it out 12 months there. And John asked about this one here. I wanted to show this here just to kind of show the progression of our cost per day, because that cash flow is really based on cost per day. So if you go back to 2018, our cost per day actual was a little over $60,000 per day. Then we hit COVID. So that orange is kind of our recovery period. And you can see we went down to, call it 43,000. Then we started creeping up to 48, 56. And then in 2023, we kind of got back to our 2019 level, which is why we're now using 2023 as our benchmark year, because now we're back to where we were. And then you can see where our budget is for this year, 73,000. So
Can I ask, Todd, in 2023, what was your budget number versus actual?
the budget number was, I want to say it was 68,
All right,
68. So we were aggressive in our budget.
right, okay, I'm just curious, because I'm looking at the 24 budget, okay.
So, and then you can see even on our number for this year, that 73, because we were ahead of budget, is obviously a higher number.
Right.
But these are actuals versus the numbers there. So at this point, we're still using 73. Any questions? I think that was it. Any questions? We got Scott here. I don't know if he got any questions.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the financial reports for April 2024. Motion by Bobby, second by Jonathan. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
So that, go back to the PowerPoint real quick.
Are we okay, Ken?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, opposed? Okay, motion carried. I didn't know if there was something.
No, I just wanted to, before for the next.
Oh, okay. Okay, next we've got acceptance of the 2023 financial audit.
All right, before I turn it over to Scott.
Yep.
Back to the PowerPoint there, so that. PowerPoint. So, yeah. So this is our audit approval. You received a draft, and before Scott talked about, we did make some adjustments, and we just wanted to give you a heads up on some of those things beforehand, and most of them are minor, but it's so you understand what you're talking about. So before we talked about, we made some minor changes, and most of them you can see are pretty minor, but we wanted to kind of point them out before Scott got up here, so everything's transparent. Page 9, we added a $sign. We put in all this stuff in there. It's pretty minor. Some of the stuff was rounding $1 off because of some of the reports. We changed the verbiage. We went 2025. Page 30, which is one of the pages that Scott's going to talk about, really updated the interest rate that was shown on there and some of the principal commentary. Again, none of the financial numbers were significantly impacted. 53, we added 2014. That wasn't in there to have a 10-year look-back period. And then, again, tie off $1. Just to kind of make sure what you saw as a draft, what changed, and these are the few items that changed. Nothing significant, but Scott will talk about that. But we wanted to point it out before he went in there. And I was remiss to not mention the hard work of the staff that put into the audit. Shane over there, raise your hand, Shane. He kind of taking the Karen spot back there, kind of low-key. Really did a great job of working through the audit. He's doing a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. you have the folks that are working hard, that don't stand up here and talk like me, that want to acknowledge them for their hard work. And with that, I'll turn it over to Scott. You can put that stuff back up there. Yeah, you can go wherever you want. She's going to put it up on the screen for you.
I'm not a good stander and paper handler, so I'm going to go ahead and sit down here.
Knock yourself out.
I start flipping through. But good afternoon, or morning, I guess. My name is Scott Nickerson from Crow. I appreciate Todd putting up those changes so we don't get any of those dollar sign changes discussed today. But as you can see, I don't have a PowerPoint, but I think the things that Todd is doing consistently throughout the year is very critical for managing the organization. The audit is really to make sure that the information you're getting throughout the year is accurate so you can make good decisions. So my job is to give you feedback more on the quality of the financial statements and the quality of the internal controls, and not so much on the numbers themselves, because Todd does a great job of covering those throughout the year. At a very high level, this page represents all the information that's in the complete set of the financial statement, which is up to 69 pages this year. Fortunately for you, I will not walk through each of those pages, but give you some highlights. One of the things I do want to point out is when you have the chance, the management discussion and analysis is information that management prepares, gives you a little background on what happened during the year, how it compares to the prior year, and gives a really good outline of the projects that are happening during the year. So if you need an elevator pitch, the MD&A is a good summary of what happened during the year compared to prior years. I encourage you to read that. The financial statements include a balance sheet or statement of net position, income statement, statement of cash flows. The statement of fiduciary net position relates to your pension that you're responsible for managing, and then the statement of changes, which is the income statement related to the pension. There are detailed footnotes that give you more information about the balance sheet and income statement. There's the required supplementary information, which is primarily related to disclosures related to your pension plans, which I'm aware you have a committee meeting that walks through the pension plan and the actuarial information, which would be much more detailed than what we focus on in our audit. Management has chosen to provide other information under supplementary information, which includes a breakdown of operating revenues and expenses and detailed operating revenues. And then we have the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which is the $20 million of expenditures you had this year that relates to probably 15 to 20 different grants that are active throughout the year. That's just one way of demonstrating the complexity of an airport operation, is having all the different federal grants as well as the state grant programs that are available to you as well. And then lastly, we are required to provide information related to your passenger facility charges. We do a compliance audit of that activity, which was about $1.8 million during the year. So that's to give you a high-level overview. Now we're going to go ahead and just touch base on our opinion. So our opinion basically is a clean or unmodified opinion. What that means is the information that is presented by management we believe to be materially correct, and the disclosures meet the appropriate standards. That's as expected each year. I'm not sure you've ever had on qualified opinion, but once again, never take it for granted. It's really the day-to-day activities that Shane and Todd and their crew do that make the audit become a clean opinion. So that's the highest form of opinion you can receive. You go to the next page, please. All right, so I know Todd focuses a lot on the income statement throughout the year, but also touching base on the balance sheet to understand where you stand as of a certain date. And this is the balance sheet that includes all your assets, including cash, receivables, grants receivable, and capital assets. Your capital assets dominate your balance sheet. They represent about 83% of your almost $390 million. They're included on your assets. That is very typical for any airport, very capital intensive. So nothing unusual there. The most significant other piece really is your cash position, of which you had 27 million of unrestricted cash, and you had about 10 million between here and here of restricted assets, which Todd, I think, referred to in one of his slides. Those are related to debt service, some advanced state funds, as well as capital reserves and operating reserves, which is really a good way to focus on how you use those reserves throughout one year or over a long period of time. And You had a rule, one of the rules was named after somebody you had?
Yeah.
Is that right? Nice to have an easy way to remember why you've chosen some of these reserves to have in place, because in your market, as you can see through COVID as well as other periods of your history, some things don't go as planned. So I think it's a really good process to have those designated restricted assets in place to provide a little cushion. If you go to the next page, which is the liabilities of the organization. Primary thing I wanted to point out related to liabilities is your bonds payable, which is about 51 million between long-term of 48 and 3.3 in the current. Typical for an airport to have long-term debt. It's just the way things are financed these days, whether it's geo-backed or revenue-based. I think the biggest risk going forward for many of the airports we work with is they're so fortunate to have interest rates that are very low. Next time you go out for bonds, you're not going to be in the same position, so your interest costs are likely to go up. I think that's a big risk for airports that are having to go out and do new capital programs, and really has an impact on the ability to use those funds and cover that interest cost. So that's the main thing I wanted to point out there.
Real quick sidebar, Todd and I talked about this yesterday. We have nothing repricing in 2024 as to our debt. When do we have anything repricing?
Our next refinancing would be the fourth quarter of 2025, approximately 23 million that we're going to have to refinance.
So that's something we've got to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you scroll down just a little bit on this page to the bottom, net position. So Todd had indicated that you have restricted assets and designated assets. For our purposes, we break down a little different under GASB accounting. But the net investment in capital assets is all your capital assets less any related debt, which was $263 million. Restricted for our purposes is only $3.4 million, because when we say restricted in our audit, it means externally restricted, where a lot of the funds you have designated as restricted might be board designated or restricted. Also, this restricted net position takes into account that the $10 million we saw up above on the balance sheet has some liabilities directly related to those restricted assets. So it brings us down to 3.6 or 3.5 million. The unrestricted portion is 30.6 million. One of the things I always get the question on is, does that mean we have $30 million we can spend? Well, the answer is typically no. What it means is that it represents, if you were to liquidate the organization, essentially, there would be around 30.6 million if everything happened, perfectly in plan. But I do think it points out, similar to the days of cash that Todd talks about, really much more granular. But this is a higher level representation of, you probably have 2 to 3 years of operating costs, right, without depreciation to fund. So it's just one indicator. If you start seeing that coming down or going to zero or negative, that's probably the time to raise your hand and start asking some questions. Most of the other airports we work with, some of them do have deficits there. It's primarily driven by their pension, or if they have a other post-employment benefit plan. So your pension, the impact of your pension on your balance sheet is only a liability of about $200,000, where other airports we work with could have literally millions or hundreds of millions of pension liability or other post-employment benefits. That's typically what would drive that unrestricted below zero, because it's more of a long-term, I view it like a mortgage, like a 30-year mortgage. You don't get in and out of those things in a single year. So that's the summary on the balance sheet. If you can go to the income statement. Now this should look very familiar to what you guys see throughout the year, but your operating revenues were 39.1 million, of which I think Todd indicated about a 5.3% increase from about 37.1 in the prior year. So about 2 million increase. Nothing really changed from an audit standpoint. I think the presentation is pretty consistent with what management provides throughout the year. You'll see some references to GASBs. I would say for discussion purposes, they don't have much impact on what you're doing year to year. They're just timing differences, so there might be some slight timing differences between when you recognize revenue and when we change some of that information related to GASB. Last year, you had the pleasure of hearing me talk about the lease standard. I'm not going to spend time on that today because I think it really has a zero impact on your operations longer term. So overall expenses, 44.8 million, operating loss, 5.6 million. Typically, when I see operating loss in a negative, I start thinking about how's that compare to depreciation. So the depreciation is about 15.1 million right there. If you saw your operating loss being more than 15 million, that would probably be a red flag. So you're in pretty good condition from that standpoint, because that depreciation is a non-cash activity. So that's the trigger I'd be looking for if your operating losses get bigger than your depreciation.
And that's one of the biggest changes between what we show every month and the audit. That 15 million is all depreciation, and normally when we go through our operating, it's just our piece of the depreciation. So
Federal versus your local funding,
so
yes.
That's why you're seeing a loss there in the way it's shown up top, but it catches up down at the bottom.
Good point, because the majority of your capital assets are federally funded, and so typically that's coming from that original place. But what it means is you still have to replace that. That 15 million typically is an indicator of how much you need to be setting aside long-term to maintain your capital infrastructure. So, all right. Then we have non-operating, which includes your CARES Act money that was operating related, the CARES ARPA, which is the primary item there. I'm sure investment income went up because interest rates are good from a cash management standpoint. And capital contributions, federal grants being the primary driver for capital, your connector project, et cetera, your AIP program. And then you also had state, with DCED funding, is that right?
Racking.
Okay. That's what,
So overall, an increase in net position of 18.8 million. Most of that is driven by the federal grants, to be honest, and the state grants. So if someone's asking, gosh, you made $18 million this year, how are we going to spend that? It's really, that money's being used to finance your capital projects, to build your assets. So that cash is already set aside. Right, Todd?
I think I can tell Darren that.
Yep. All right. Next page, please. All right, so for those that are interested in cash versus accrual, this gives you a little summary of where cash actually went. From operating activities, you generated a positive $12.5 million based on customer receipts, your vendor cost, and your employee costs. That's offset by your ARPA funds and operating money that's non-capital, which brought in $2.6 million. If you scroll down a little bit. Then we have our capital. As you can see, a lot of capital activity, capital grants received, your PFCs, your CFCs. You did draw $7.8 million on your 21 bonds during the year. You spent almost $30 million on capital assets during the year. And then you have your related interest and principal being paid on both your bonds payable as well as your capital leases, which were about 2 or 3 million, I think, at the end of the year. So overall, your cash did increase by $8.2 million year over year. Keep in mind that you do have accounts payable, you do have items that are due where that cash will be used, because I think you had about $7 million of accounts payable, which will be paid in the beginning of '24. All right, you go to the next page, please. We're going to skip that. Go to the next. All right, so just a summary of bonds payable. These include all the normal bonds. I think they totaled about, what, 40, if you scroll up, 52 million dollars, of which 3.3 million out is due in the current year. No big shifts there other than this 21A was a drawdown bond, and so you drew about half of it in 2022 and about the 7.8 and about in 2023. So when you're looking at your debt schedules and looking at future financing in the next couple of years, it's really about coordinating the debt decline of the bonds that you're paying off and being able to fund new bonds. The interest rates we talked about already. Todd, are any other big issues that you're seeing with bonds right now?
No, to piggyback on what we talked about earlier, the first two items up there are the items that we will be renewing next year. So they're about, call it 28 million at the end of last year, but it'll be approximately 23 by the time we refinance them next year. So just give you an idea, you can see that's 2.4 and 3.5. So obviously, we're not going to get those rates when we go out. unless our favorite bankers figure out something to help us out.
Well, the Fed might help us out someday. We'll
Yeah,
see.
someday.
Yeah. All right, go to the next page, please. I'd indicated before, I don't intend for you to read through this, but this is the detail of all the federal award activity that you have, which equated to about $20 million during the year. And I always try to show something that looks overwhelming to point out that there's a lot of complexities to what you're doing each year. Managing the grant awards is very critical. Anytime you get new awards like the ARPA and CARES money, which is for operations, very different than the AIP program, different rules, different compliance. To the extent you continue using these funds or are able to successfully obtain other state or federal funds, I think what we're seeing in a lot of airports is the ability to manage those grants when they have so many agreements they're trying to manage, as well as manage them with their capital and operating plans. And some of them are bringing in professional managers essentially to manage projects because, you know, all the departments have their day jobs, right? And sometimes it's hard just to coordinate the efforts between finance and operations and the construction manager and so forth. So we're seeing a lot more activity with project managers or program managers coming in to assist on a project-by-project basis, because a lot of the clients we work with can't afford to really have, either can't afford or don't need someone full-time, so they try to bring in the expertise when they need it instead of just trying to fill a position per se. So that's it for federal, and I think there's one more page. All right, we're in a home stretch here. So in addition to providing an opinion on your financial statements, we're also engaged to audit your compliance under government auditing standards and under uniform guidance, which is a Single Audit Act. We're happy to report that we have unqualified or clean opinions related to government auditing standards and your compliance with your federal grants, which is good news. We also issue an opinion related to your passenger facility charges, and we have a clean opinion on that as well. They just want to make sure that you have good controls in place to collect those charges and then how they're being used, because you have a plan that you have to follow. Your plan, the way you guys operate, you bring in the money and you use it in the same year typically. So you're applying it to either debt service projects or other approved projects that the FAA approves in your plan that gets updated, I don't know how many years, every 5 or 10 years, depending on what's happening. But we do provide compliance on that. So basically at a high level, everything looked good. There were no significant adjustments other than some of the things Todd had pointed out that we're still kind of cleaning up the report. I also wanted to mention that management does prepare the financial statements, which is not always the case with other clients. So I want to thank them for staying engaged and taking the time to be involved in that financial statement process. Hopefully you see that there's a lot that goes into it throughout the year as well as at year end. And a couple of things to point out is there are adjustments that management makes just at year end that you probably don't see in your monthly. The depreciation, for example, that Todd indicated related to federal. A one-time entry every year to update your pension activity. A one-time activity to update for the GASBs related to leases and subscription liabilities. So there are some adjustments that happen at year end. Those are ones that are performed by management. It's easier to do it one time than 12 times. So most of our clients handle it the same way. But so if there are slight differences between what's presented during the year, it's typically related to those year-end changes only. So I'll stop there.
Those are the ones that you do share with us. I know one of the entries we had this year was retirement of assets in regard to the.
Yes.
Yeah. So we do see those adjustments.
Yeah, just want to make sure that you're not seeing him monthly, you're probably seeing him as he wraps up the year. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. All right, be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'll entertain a motion for the recommendation of acceptance of the 2023 financial audit to the full Board of Governors. Motion by Mike, second by Bobby. Okay, open it up for discussion and questions. Okay, Scott, putting words in your mouth from a couple of seconds ago, and I agree with you. One of the things that makes our job a little bit easier is the quality of the information that comes through. And it sounds like in your report, you echo that in terms of the information we get, so we can make good decisions on an ongoing basis. I want to thank Todd and the team for that. And I want to thank Scott for his work in terms of certifying that, because this is all part of the process and it all ties together. So thank you.
John, to your point earlier, do you have available or can you generate a report showing us what our interest rate exposure is over the next 5 years?
Yeah,
So that we can, because we have capital projects coming up, and depending upon when this debt resets and where rates are at, it could impact our projects. If we could see like a global picture of what our debt looks like and when it resets.
And I think you've got, if you go back to, let me see, go back to the PDF, so
I
that,
think you had the maturity date in there, not the rate.
yeah, I think it is, not that one, the one that Scott had, the PDF version. So
Yeah, and also I think what Jonathan's asking for, and I agree with him, is we've got a couple of material upcoming projects. A ballpark idea as to when we think we'd be going out for financing on those.
Go back, right there.
It all will slot together.
Right here.
Yeah.
So you can see here, so the 15, just use the 10 years, that's pretty much, the first two are going to refi in 2025, the 2015s. The 2018 will refi in 2028. And I believe the connector is also 2028, I think, that was 7 years.
I just think it's good for us to keep in mind that, like, we can anticipate or hope that rates come down, but I don't think we should assume they're going to. And with our projects coming up, like, our existing debt can definitely impact that.
Exactly.
Rates, reset at higher levels.
And I think we're talking about some sort of cash flow management, maybe extending some of these things out longer as opposed to keeping the original maturity dates, just to kind of give us a little bit more cash flow as we go forward. Because obviously, you're not going to get 2.4 and 3.5.
No.
That's just not going to happen. So we understand that. And we're also talking about taking on some additional debt.
Yeah.
We have to make sure we can afford that even during tough times. So that's something that we want to keep in mind.
And then we slot the rate resets correctly so that we don't have anything or everything coming due.
Right, we don't have everything coming due at the same time.
Yeah.
And also giving us a wiggle room for the peaks and valleys of our business.
So let's do this to follow on Jonathan's point. I think it's something we need to pay better attention, I shouldn't say better, more attention to, because with the projects we have coming up and the size of those projects and the amount of debt those projects are going to require, let's put together a schedule that shows all the rate resets that we have in the existing portfolio and anticipated funding dates. And I know that's going to be throwing darts to a certain extent, but anticipated funding dates for what we have coming up. So we can see how all that looks, and we can monitor that as we go through the process of looking at the north side construction and parking deck construction and any other projects that we have, so that we've got a good handle on our overall debt situation, because it will be materially different in the near term, and rates are going to be higher in the relatively near term as well.
And depending on the timing of those construction projects, you could be seeing a reset and a financing at the same time. It's pretty close. We're pretty close to the same time.
Yep. Yep, so all things we need to take into consideration. Also, Todd, have available, because it's kind of what Mike said, we may look at situations in the refi arena where it may make sense to break contracts and refi. So we want to make sure we understand what our prepayment penalties are as well. Okay, do we have any other questions or discussion on the 2023 audit? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Scott, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, do we have any new business to bring before the Finance Committee today? Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn. Bobby, we're good. We're adjourned.
She says we don't.
You don't have to have.
Go ahead and get started.
I think so. I think we can keep moving.
Not too ready. Welcome to the May 23rd, 2024 Business Committee. So that, can you please take a roll call?
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
Ann Baum. Don Gottschall. Here. James Irwin. Glenn Reedman.
Present.
Chris Worley. Do you not have a form?
We'll have a quorum now. Ricky has not been assigned to a committee. He's assigned to this committee for today.
Okay.
Okay, so
Ricky, say you're here.
That was a
Call
great
his
first
name.
acting chairman.
Here.
Well done,
Sure.
Chair.
Well
See,
done.
this is when you put experience in the
I'll
chair.
tell you what, well done.
Wow.
do we have a quorum?
Ricky, welcome to the business
Okay.
committee.
All right.
We have a
Here.
quorum,
For today, Rick.
and we do not have public
We'll
comment.
have a new committee
All right, thank you.
papers at the end of the executive.
So I'm assuming everybody got a chance to look at the minutes, so ask for a motion to approve the minutes from April 25th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions on the motion? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have the sword. Okay. Ryan, capital projects update, please.
Here you go. No problem.
Good morning, everybody. So run through our typical update, a couple changes, but kind of run through where we are. Runway project, where we are today, is really focusing on the west end of runway 6, doing the shoulder work, which is kind of this lighter color here. Probably the next few weeks, they've done a lot of the base preparation and going to be getting ready to pave that south side of the shoulder. And then once they get done with that, flip to the north side and then keep moving down the runway. As we like to show is just some of the outages coordinating with FAA. FAA is still working on the Mauser project, which is the instrument lighting system replacement. So we haven't heard any issues with the carriers, but we've been coordinating with them in terms of impacts. And FAA has actually been working really well within our construction time frame at night, getting the work done when the runway is closed. Package 4, this one, as we talked about, is really just working through the punch list. Probably in the next couple weeks, we'll get the final numbers and quantities and then working on the FAA closeout. And again, the reason we show that is the final 10% of the grant we can't request until we actually submit the full closeout, what you know the final project number is. So we kind of hold that because it'll probably be about $700,000 to $900,000 that we have to request at the end. So again, that's a good chunk of money we want to keep an eye on. Package 5 is really the work that we just talked about in terms of the shoulder construction. Again, nightly closures, 11 p.m. to 5:30 a.m., coordinating with the carriers. As you can see, again, putting in the approach end lighting or the threshold lighting. So all the work they got to do. And again, every night, basically building in the base of the shoulder, moving on, and then they'll come back and pave that. So I added this project that we've been kind of working on behind the scenes, but just wanted to get the committee up to date or up to speed. Included in our CIP, the taxiway alpha rehabilitation. So taxiway alpha is the parallel taxiway to runway 624. So currently looking at the design documents, you can kind of see the green is really just a typical pavement rehabilitation, mill down, build back up. The blue in the photo is actually areas that we need to completely reconstruct just because of the base that was in there before, the condition of the areas, and similar to what we did with the runway 64 project, because of the heavier cargo aircraft, we actually have to beef up the pavement section as well. So currently working through the design, coordinating with operations on some of the impacts of how we're going to do the project, similar to the runway 624 project. Also coordinating with the FAA on funding. As of right now, kind of that blue rectangle is what we're looking at as the phase 1 construction based on FAA funding availability. So as we work through that in the next couple of months to hopefully put a bid out in July, late June, maybe July timeframe for a grant this fall, that's kind of the section we're looking at. So more to come. I just wanted to make the committee aware as we're working through that FAA project. You can kind of see here in some areas of Alpha, that's a pen sticking out in the back. So it's not something you really want on a taxiway when you got cargo aircraft going down the pavement. And the reason we're actually doing this first is this section right here in front of Hangar 10 is probably one of the worst sections of the taxiway. So trying to hit that first. Passenger boarding
Brian,
booth.
before you go to the boarding booths, we've had, with the number of nighttime closures, we've had any pushback from any of the carriers here, or is everyone happy that the work's getting done?
With schedule adjustments, there's always discussions, a little bit of pushback, but I think, they work well with us. We have conversations a lot with them. And I think because we've been having a lot of those conversations, they've kind of let us know that they use our model at other airports in terms of communicating with the carriers. So that's always good to hear that,
Yeah.
again, you can't communicate enough when you're talking about closures.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
Yep, but good point, and this will be a similar conversation because some of the work could be done at night, some of the work in here between two taxi lanes can be done during longer durations where they can do back taxiing, so it's a lot of coordination from that perspective as well. So no, good question. Boarding Bridge project, been pretty busy this past month, so Gate 2, which was as a reminder, former Gate 3, I think we showed was installed last month, but it went fully operational May 13th of this month. Gate 10, currently removed the old one, put the new one in, currently working on commissioning it, and probably the end of next week, that'll be up and running as well for that piece. So again, just some photos. Top left is Gate 2, former Gate 3. You can see you got the updated markings of aircraft that are on there. And then bottom left is the old, pretty old looking too, Bridge 10, and then the new one that they were putting in. And they did that swap basically in a day and then just continue to work through it. Parking garage project, really working, as we talked about before, with the engineering team. So we've had 2 meetings at this point with AECOM, have another one scheduled in a couple weeks. Really working through, just kind of as a reminder, updating the site selection matrix. And given what we know from when we first started the project and with parking demand and trends, really what makes sense. And we're evaluating again, really between the current employee lot and the short-term parking lot and seeing again the pros and cons of those as we continue or before we continue to move forward with the design. But again, still looking at, you were talking about earlier, financing and projects, but still looking at the timing of the need for parking running out of capacity in 2028, which is why we're looking at doing this now. So more to come, but we've been having a lot of conversations with the group. And I think it's been a good team selection that we did with AECOM, working with ADCI, kind of our program manager, and kind of getting everyone's thoughts together and the roles and responsibilities has been a good transition. So we're excited to keep that moving. Not much changed on this, working through the documents for the Air Handler Unit 4 replacement, as we talked about before. We're looking to procure the actual air handler through cooperative purchasing because it's a long lead item, and then work to get the other trades advertised for bids. So we're still working through that process as well. Comprehensive paving, last month, probably remember we did kind of the section on the left, which was at the tail end of Gate 2, former Gate 3, getting that up and running once the bridge was put in place. And once Bridge 10 is up and running, we'll be able to take Bridge 7 out of service and do some of the concrete repairs that are required there. So more to come on seeing what those are. But there's some slab replacement, but most of it is just some of the joint repairs and sealant, just to keep the longevity of the apron where the aircraft are. Queen City, again, we mentioned this before, the 2 FAA grants for the lighting replacement of runway 1533. Really just working through coordinating the timing of when the new vault will arrive, and then working backwards from there in terms of construction. So probably late summer, early fall is when we'll start getting that work underway. But as a reminder, it's replacing all of the lighting and conduit along the runway, adding this section of lighting that never existed, and then putting in the new electrical vault right there behind the hangar. So just trying to coordinate it so they're not coming in now, doing the lighting work, and then waiting until the vault basically arrives. Here's where we are with our current projects. Again, just tracking expended costs and the grant receipts, so taking a look at that. And again, you can see we talked about the one on top, package 4, getting ready to close that out, as well as getting the remainder of the grants, continuing to move the other ones forward as we progress those. And then just kind of always keep this on here as we add. So number 5 is what we just talked about, the taxiway alpha design, and some of the other ones in green will be coming in the next few months as we continue to make updates. I think we were going back and forth, and Paul, you asked the other month in terms of cargo. We're still working through the TIP process with the Planning Commission, haven't executed the grant, having calls with FHWA. So once we know more of that timing, we'll put that on there in terms of progressing that project as well. Because there's, as we've talked about before, there's intricacies of what you see here is the parallel taxiway delta, which incorporates FAA funding as well as some of those restricted accounts that Todd went through. And then there's obviously the infra grant that we have to track as well, working with the developer. So some more to come on that. We're continuing to progress that forward. So that's all I had for updates. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? All right. Seeing none, you did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any new business for the business committee? No need for executive session that I know about. Am I right, Tom?
Nothing.
All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Our newest member will second it. Perfect. We're adjourned.
Newest member for one meeting.
Okay.
Well
Done
done,
in a
Ricky.
minute.
Well done, Ricky.
Thanks.
All right, we'll call to order the executive committee. Sylvette, would you call the roll, please?
Glenn Reedman,
Present?
Mike Stershik,
Here.
Frank Facciano, John Hayes.
Here.
Paul Anthony.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Sylvette, any public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll move to the action items. Approval of the meeting minutes, April 25.
Motion.
Second.
John, any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Next, we have the approval of Florio, Perucci, Steinhardt, Capelli, and Tipton LLC invoices for April 2024. Take a motion.
Move.
Paul, second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Approval of closing resolution for 304 Main Street, Catasauqua. Darren.
Thank you, sir. So this should be pretty quick, I think. The board approved last month the acquisition of 304 Main Street in Catasauqua. The title company required a formal resolution basically authorizing myself or Tom to sign the closing documents. So that's really all this is. So happy to answer questions, but it's pretty straightforward. It's 3 pages, as only an attorney can do, to say that Tom and I are able to sign documents.
Let's get to the resolved part.
A motion to,
You don't need all the whereases, right? Yeah, how about it?
do we have a motion to approve the resolution? Paul, second, Mike. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion.
Thank you. They should all be that easy.
Yeah, don't let that,
I'm not gonna let it be that.
Discussion items, the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority Code of Ethics training. Tom will give us an update on that.
Sure. I know Elizabeth Marcon was not able to join us today, but Cody's in her stead. As part of our annual Code of Ethics training, Elizabeth is prepared to provide that next board meeting, which is on Tuesday. So we'll be handling that right after the board meeting. So we'll adjourn, we'll go into conference, run through that training. I know we have some folks that haven't maybe been through that live and in-person training yet, but we'll again tee that up for May, and that'll recur in May as we move forward, as we get new members on.
I think Justin's comments at the end of the last training session, should be, archived forever.
Yeah, we like those.
I don't remember what I said.
Yeah, what'd he say?
you know what, then yes, attend
We
the
all
next
got a
one.
little nervous for a second.
What did I say?
You forgot, so don't be there.
I don't remember, but I'd have to go back and look. But
It wasn't recorded. Let's not go back and look.
You said something at the end.
You're never sure what's coming out.
Tom, how long is that training about?
Elizabeth didn't really indicate a time frame, but it was probably less than 30 minutes.
Okay.
And I think when we look at what will be on the board agenda, we won't have a lot of items to run through for the board on Tuesday, so I don't think it'll be a long meeting, and we can move right into the training as well, so.
No problem, thank you.
Sure.
I'm not going to be at the meeting on Tuesday.
Okay.
What's the backup for the?
So the backup is same thing we did last year. For those that can't attend, we're going to record the training, and then we'll send that out. So that'll send that out to those that couldn't be here. So,
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
sure.
And the next update is on the new committee assignments. If you'll look at the committee assignments. The way we did this, the chair is an ex officio member of the committees. So that leaves us with 14 members, 8 from Lehigh County and 6 from Northampton County. So what we did is we put 4 Lehigh County people on each committee and 3 Northampton County people on each committee. And we have a chair, Dawn is going to chair the business committee from Northampton County, and John from Lehigh County will do the finance. So we tried to split it up, and the executive committee, is that membership is stated in the bylaws of the authority. So if you have any questions on this, or if there's any discussion, or you want to see me about it, that's fine.
I just have one question. You said 8 and 6. Does that mean we're short a member from Northampton County right now?
No, me.
Oh.
I'm the ex officio member. See, I'm the 7th member.
Fair enough. I'm not quick with math, but I do appreciate it.
So I left 6.
That's why you're not on the finance committee.
There's a reason I will never be on the finance committee.
Sorry.
No apology. I also didn't join the finance committee on CACLV for the same reason.
Yeah, we kept you on business. That's good.
One quick comment, Glenn. One of the
Yes.
things we've been doing now for years, and it's worked out well, is even if you're not on a committee, come to the committee.
Right, yeah.
And that makes us, I think, a much more effective and more efficient board. So encourage everybody to continue doing that.
Okay, great. Any other comments from members of the board? Do we have any new business? Do we have any need for an executive session?
Do we have any updates on legal matters or?
So I know that Attorney Marcon indicated that she will be in attendance at the board meeting on Tuesday, and the plan would be to have an executive session at that session. So,
Okay, sounds good, thank you.
yeah, she's going to, we'll walk through that on Tuesday.
Okay, and before we adjourn, we have a meeting on Tuesday, and Tuesday is also Taco Tuesday here at the.
I'm really annoyed I'm going to miss.
Geekers will be here at 11 o'clock to take care of you, Pete.
Yes, you gonna be here, Bobby? No.
All right, take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
We are adjourned.